Okay, this table, stand. Follow along and go stand right behind those children. All right, want this table to come next. Leave all that here, we don't need that down in the queue. This table. And the last table. Sit right behind someone here. Sit right there. No, come down. Your body's on that way. Sit right. You're sitting right behind someone. Scoot this way. Scoot this way. Scoot this way. Focus. Eyes on me. You're right behind someone. You're right behind someone. And you're right behind someone. And you're right behind someone. And then you're going to come right here. 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 See it? Yes, there. You're right behind someone. You're right behind someone, and then you're right behind her. Okay. Now, good morning, boys and girls. Well, we got to do a little better than that. Good morning, boys and girls.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, today we're going to be, this morning rather, we're going to be talking about something that we talk about all the time. When we're doing reading, we always talk about something that's called genre. Give me a thumbs up if you've ever heard that word genre mentioned before when we start our reading stories each week. Okay, I see a lot of thumbs up. Well, just to give you a little bit about genre, we know that genre is just a specific type of work, or it's a specific type of writing. Some of you may have a favorite genre. Your favorite genre may be fiction. Someone's favorite genre may be realistic fiction. Your favorite genre may even be science fiction. There are some of us a lot of times who are into science fiction. So that could be your favorite genre. Okay, you can come on down. You can sit up at the top, wherever you normally go. Keegan, just come around over here on this side. Right there is good. That's good. Good job. Okay. Now, we want to welcome back our friends. Now, sometimes when we get to talking about genre, you may be wandering around a bookstore. If you've ever gone to a bookstore, sometimes you may be wandering around a bookstore, and when you look in that bookstore, whether it's Barnes and Nobles, have you ever seen a Barnes and Nobles bookstore before? Well, we have one in Pensacola, sometimes if you're there, or a Books A Million, or just any bookstore. Sometimes when you're wandering around those bookstores, you'll see your books are divided into genres. They're divided into sections. Like you may see, well, this says fiction, or this is science fiction, or it's realistic fiction, things like that. So a lot of times your books are going to be divided into or arranged by genres. Well, today we're going to be talking about genres, and we're going to get a little bit more in depth. All right, I want you to take a look at the cover of this book. This book is called, and I know it's a story that everyone has probably heard at some point in time. Let's get your sleep. This book is called If You Give a Moose a Muffin, and it's by Laura Numeroff. If You Give a Moose a Muffin, okay? And I want you to think about this book. Now, this little book is going to be a little bit tricky. This book is called What Daddies Do Best. But guess what? This book is kind of magical.
The other side.
Now this side of the book is going to be about what? What mommies do best, okay? So when we get to thinking about these two books, If You Give a Moose a Muffin and What Do Mommies Do Best, I want you to be mindful of this. When we talk about nonfiction, what does it mean? I want you to, if you know what it means, give me an okay that I know what that means. If you know what nonfiction is, I want to see this signal if you can tell me what nonfiction is. Let's see. Liam, what is nonfiction?
A true story.
Nonfiction is a true story. When we're thinking about that, that means it happened. That means nonfiction means it happened. It means it happens in real life. Now, what about realistic fiction? A lot of our Basil Reader stories, they're realistic fiction. So who thinks they have an idea? I see some okays telling me that I got this. Who think you can tell me what realistic fiction is? Stella?
Something that's made up.
Okay, it can be made up, but realistic fiction. Think about that. Realistic fiction. Lily?
It can also mean that it's real.
That's right. Realistic fiction can also mean that it could happen in real life. But a lot of times our stories that we read in class all the time that are realistic fiction, they normally have what kind of characters?
Hey.
Like Sam Come Back, Pig in a Wig. What kind of characters are those? Are they human?
No.
No. What are they?
Animals.
A lot of times they are animals, but those animals are doing what?
Something in a fiction.
They're doing things that are
Fiction.
real. Sometimes they're doing things that are real, which makes them realistic fiction. It's a real story, but they're doing things that could really happen in real life. Think about fantasy. I want to know if you know what fantasy means. Who can tell me what fantasy means? What's fantasy, Kaylee?
It's like something that's where they don't like wear stuff like dogs.
Excuse me. What?
Like dogs don't wear stuff.
That's right. Dogs don't really dress up, do they?
No.
But if you have but then sometimes somebody might say yes, because if you have a dog, you may dress your dog up in clothes. So, right. But when we talk about fantasy, fantasy meant it could never happen. So you have some stories, and there are lots of things that I like. I like fantasies. Even though they're not real, I just kind of like to live, I like to live in the moment when we talk about fantasy stories. So that's something that you can think about. Fantasies, they could never really happen. Realistic fiction, it could happen in real life. Nonfiction, it happened. And it happened in real life, so it's true. Okay, today we're going to be reading I'm going to be reading these stories that I showed you in my hand. And we're going to determine which one was a fantasy story, and then we're going to just see which one was a realistic fiction story, okay? So what am I going to be looking for today? We're going to try to see if one of these is a what? Realistic fiction, or if it's a fantasy. Meaning, okay, no, that didn't really happen. So which one is a fantasy and which one is realistic? All right, my first story, If You Give a Moose a Muffin, and it's by Laura Numeroff, and it's illustrated by Felicia Bond. Excuse me. If you give a moose a muffin, he'll want some jam to go with it. So you'll bring out some of your mother's homemade blackberry jam. When he's finished eating the muffin, he'll want another, and another, and another. When they're all gone, he'll ask you to make some more. You'll have to go to the store to get some muffin mix. He'll want to go with you. When he opens the door and feels how chilly it is, he'll ask to borrow a sweater. sweater on, he'll notice one of the buttons is loose. He'll ask for a needle and thread. He'll start sewing. The button will remind him of the puppets his grandmother used to make. So he'll ask for some old socks. He'll make sock puppets. When they're done, he'll want to put on a puppet show. He'll need some cardboard and paints. Then he'll ask you to help make the scenery. When the scenery is finished, he'll get behind the couch, but his antlers will stick out. So he'll ask for something to cover them up. You'll bring him a sheet from your bed. When he sees the sheet, he'll remember he wants to be a ghost for Halloween. He'll try it on and shout, "Boo!" It'll scare him so much he'll knock over the paints. So he'll use the sheet to clean up the mess. Then he'll ask for some soap to wash it out. He'll probably want to hang the sheet up to dry. He'll go outside to put it on the clothesline. Well, when he's out in the yard, he'll see your mother's blackberry bushes. Oh boy. Seeing the blackberries will remind him of her jam. He'll probably ask you for some. And chances are, if you give him the jam, what? He'll want a muffin to go with it. Okay? Now, I'm just going to put this right here. That way you can kind of check out our title and just kind of look at the cover of that book to help us remember. Now, when we were thinking about that, I want you to think about the first words that you heard in that book. If you give a moose a muffin, he'll want some jam to go with it. Now, when we think about that, would you give a moose a muffin?
No.
No, probably not. Probably not. Now, I want you to let's listen to our next story. I guess I'll start with one. Since I'm a mommy, I'm going to start with What Mommies Do Best is the one I'm going to start with. And this one is also by the same author as the book that we just finished reading, If You Give a Moose a Muffin. This author is Laura Numeroff as well. She's the same author that wrote If You Give a Moose a Muffin, If You Give a Pig a Pancake, If You Give a Dog a Donut, If You Give a Cat a Cupcake, all those books, this is the same author. What Mommies Do Best by Laura Numeroff. Mommies can teach you how to ride a bicycle. Make a snowman with you, and make a delicious cake for your birthday. Mommies can help you make a garden grow, give you a piggyback ride, and take care of you when you're sick. Mommies can watch the sunset with you. Sew the loose button on your teddy bear and hold you when you're feeling sad. Mommies can take you trick-or-treating, help you give the dog a bath, and play with you in the park. Mommies can read you a bedtime story, tuck you in, and kiss you goodnight. But best of all, mommies can give you lots and lots of love. Okay? Now, let's switch. What am I going to read next?
What
daddies do best. Okay, so let's find out. We've read about what mommies can do best. Now let's see what daddies can do best. Daddies can teach you how to ride a bicycle. Make a snowman with you. And make a delicious cake for your birthday. Could your daddy bake a good cake for your birthday?
Yes.
I got some yeses and some nos.
Yes.
My dad, yeah, probably. But my husband, not so much. Daddies can help you make a garden grow, give you a piggyback ride, and take care of you when you're sick. Daddies can watch the sunset with you.
That's a fox.
Sew the loose button on your teddy bear. Don't think my husband can do that part either. And hold you when you're feeling sad. Daddies can take you trick-or-treating, help you give the dog a bath, and play with you in the park. Daddies can read you a bedtime story. Tuck you in and kiss you goodnight. But best of all, daddies can give you lots and lots of love. Okay, now, there was a difference. Whenever I read to you, if you give a moose a muffin, the first line in that story is, if you give a moose a muffin, he'll want some jam to go with it. And when I asked you, would you give a moose a muffin, what did you tell me? No. No. Now, whenever I started off with the beginning of this story, it said, mommies can teach you how to ride a bicycle. Daddies can teach you how to ride a bicycle. Now, tell me, is that true?
Yes.
Yes. Could your mommy teach you how to ride a bicycle in real life?
Yes.
Could your daddy teach you how to ride a bicycle in real life?
Yes.
So those are true stories, aren't they? Those are things that could really happen. Okay. Now, when you think about that, I want you to think about things that your mommy and your daddy can do, or things that you do with your mommy and daddy, or things that they do with you. And I want you right beside each other. Just partner up with somebody that's right beside you, and talk about some things that you do with your mommy and daddy, or your mommy and daddy does with you. So it could be you two boys on the end can partner up, you three right in here, you three on this end. Stella and Justin, Lily and Jalen, Keaton, Brennan, you two, and Kaylee and Lily. Talk amongst yourselves in your little group, and I want you to talk about some things that your mommy and your daddy can do with you, or things that you can do with them. Okay? Go. Hands in your lap. We'll get to you. And 3, 2, 1. Eyes on me and hands in your lap. Okay, I want to go back here to this group in the back, you three. Liam, tell me some things that you guys talked about that your mom or your dad or grandmother or grandfather may help you do.
Me taught me how to paint really nicely.
They taught you how to paint. All right, Chasen?
Mom teach me how to ride my bike.
How to ride your bike, okay?
Me and my mommy played with Legos and my daddy.
So that's something y'all do together, play games together. Teach you how to ride your bicycle. Okay, share one thing from this group.
I was really sad to get on my scooter, so mommy had got on with me.
Okay, that's something your mom helped you when you felt sad about something. She was there to help you. Okay, Keaton, what was one thing your group talked about?
My mom teach me how to ride my bike.
How to ride your bike. Anybody else in their group talked about how to ride their bike? Okay, hands down. All right, what is something that you talked about with your partner?
My daddy helped me give the puppies a bath.
All right, giving your puppy a bath. Stella, what about your group? Going on a trip with your parents, okay? They took you somewhere nice on a trip. Okay, this group back here in the back. Jalen, what's something that you guys talked about?
My mom helps me bathe the dog.
Helping bathe the dog. Okay, this group right here.
Help you with your bicycle.
Help you with your bike. Okay, this group is shared, this group is shared. This group back here.
My dad teaches me and helps me ride my bike without my training wheels.
Without the training wheels. Okay, we've shared for this group. Have you guys given something? Okay, this group right here, what was one thing from this group?
My mom helps me learn.
Helps you learn. And that could be helping you learn new things at home. It could also be when you take your homework home, helping you learn your homework. Well, all of those things are realistic things that can happen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I'm going to place this book right here. Now, going back to genres again, boys and girls, we can use different genres to write different types of books. For example, the two books that we just read, those were examples of different types of genres. Now, why would an author do that? Why would an author, like if, just say for instance, we use genres to write different types of books, such as the two that we just read about. Why do you think that authors do that, Lily?
To be nice.
To be nice? You think so? Okay, why do you think authors write for different genres? Like a fiction, or a fantasy, or a nonfiction. Why do you think that authors write those different kinds of books? Stella?
To make it sound better.
Okay, it could be to make things sound better. Jayla, why do you think they write different genres of books?
To help you learn.
To help you learn. Okay, hands in your lap for just a minute. Sometimes, boys and girls, whenever authors are writing from different genres, that could also be, authors could write more books. So they write different kind of books, and they do that sometimes so authors can be more interesting. And so authors can try new things. Don't you try new things? Think about before, going back to, I heard a lot of people about their parents helping them ride their bike. Well, think about sometimes before you learned to ride your bike, when that was going to be something you were going to do, that means you were going to be trying something new, did it not? Okay, well that's the same thing with authors. Sometimes they start doing things with a different genre because they want to try something new. Or it could be things that they want to sound different or to sound better, okay? All right, what we're going to do, boys and girls, we have talked about our genres. We've read our different stories this morning, and we've discussed those stories, and we've discussed the difference. Now, what I want to do is go back. Whenever I first started, I told you that we were going to be reading two stories. One of them was going to be fiction, fantasy, and one of those books were going to be realistic fiction. Now, raise your hand. Well, no, I take that back. Which one of these books, raise your hand if you think that, well, I tell you what, which one of these books do you think was a fantasy book? Raise your hand, don't blurt it out. If you blurt, remember we take away someone else's chance to learn. Which one of these books was the fantasy book, the nonfiction book? Adrian? This one. If you give a moose a muffin, right? Because we know that we really wouldn't give a moose a muffin, would we?
No.
And we established that in the beginning when we asked that question. Okay, and we know that this book is what? Who remembers what we call that genre? Everybody can tell me.
True fiction.
Realistic fiction. Okay, so we have our fantasy is if you give a moose a muffin, and our realistic fiction was what mommies do best and
What daddies do best.
what daddies do best. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to go and we're going to do a little activity with that. What I want you to do, I want the back row to stand up. Okay, the second row to stand up, and we're just gonna, when we get up, we're gonna go to our spot at the table that I placed you at. And remember, hands in your lap. When you get there, you're gonna have a seat, put your hands in your lap. This first row, and we're gonna start at the top row, and you're going to go to your spot, okay? Got it? Okay. Start at the top row, and we're gonna go to your spot. You sit at the table. Stand behind your chairs. Real quick, stand behind your chairs. Stand behind your chairs. Quickly. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. Keegan, since you came in, if you'll get you a chair, you can sit on the end of their table, right over there. Here, here's one right here. You can sit in this table. Now, what I want you to do, we're going to stretch it out. We've been sitting for a long time. Stretch, reach up, reach up, reach up. Wiggle it out, wiggle it out. Spirit fingers. Down to the side. Down by your side. Okay? Twist. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. Okay, now, let's sit at our seat. Take one page and pass it around. Take one and pass it around. Take one and pass it around. Take one and pass it. Now, what I'm handing out to you, remember, what is the first thing you do when you get something?
Write your name.
Write your name and write your date. Write your name and your date. Quietly write your name and your date. That's all you need to do. Now, what we're going to be doing, this right here is just kind of like a culminating activity to what we have just talked about. We have talked about fantasy, okay? We've talked about fantasy. We've talked about realistic fiction. Now, all of our passages are from Laura Numeroff books. Whether it's the one we read today, whether if you give a pig a pancake, we've all read those books even before today. So what we're talking about today is going to be from one of those books. Now, we're going to read each one of those passages. And out to the side, we're going to either write an F if it's fantasy, or we're going to write an RF if it's realistic fiction. Okay? F for fantasy, RF for realistic fiction. Okay, let's go over number 1. Grandmas can take you to the beach. Give me, let's see. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pull one of my magic sticks from my cup. And whichever number I call, you're going to tell me whether that's fantasy, can't really happen, or realistic fiction, it can happen, okay? Number 8. Realistic fiction. So you're on number 1, you're going to write an RF. Just that simple. You're going to write RF.
RL.
All right, now on number 2. Grandpas can play games with you. Let's see. Number 11. Is that fantasy or realistic fiction? Realistic fiction. Good job, Brennan. RF on number 2. Because your grandpas, they could really play a game with you, couldn't they?
Yes.
Okay? Now, number 3. If you give a pig a pancake, she'll want some syrup to go with it. Is that fantasy or realistic fiction? Number 21.
Fantasy.
That's fantasy. Because I don't know about you, but are you going to be giving a pig a pancake?
No.
No, I don't think so. So I'm going to write an F on number 3. All right. Daddies can teach you to ride a bike. Number 4. Rowing. That's right. Not here. Number 15. Realistic fiction. Because your dad can teach you to ride a bike. Now, here's my next one. When he, and that's talking about the moose, we're on number 5. When he, the moose, opens the door and feels how chilly it is, he'll ask to borrow a sweater. Now, is that going to be fiction or realistic fiction, Justin? Is that fantasy? Fantasy. Because, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to open a door and there's a moose standing out there, or there's standing out there and saying, I'm chilly and I'd like a sweater. I'd kind of feel kind of scared, wouldn't you? Okay, so we know that's going to be fantasy. All right, number 6. The tree will remind him, now that's the dog that we're talking about. The tree will remind him of apple juice, so he'll probably ask you for some more. Well, number 20. Is that fantasy or realistic fiction? Fantasy. I don't give my dog juice. Do you give your dog juice?
No.
No.
My dog is allergic.
Water. That's exactly right. We do water. Okay, let's look at number 7. Then he'll, that's the mouse. Now we're on the one about the mouse. Needs some books for his bookshelf. Number 2. Is that fantasy or is that realistic fiction? Number 2. The mouse needing books for his bookshelf. Is that fantasy or realistic fiction? So think about that. If you've got a mouse, is your mouse going to want books to read? No. So is that going to be fantasy or is that realistic fiction? That's going to be fantasy. And our last one, mommies can read you a bedtime story, number 5. Is that fantasy or is that realistic fiction?
It's something that happens.
So is that fantasy or is it realistic fiction?
Fantasy.
So fantasy means it can't really happen. Realistic fiction, it can happen. Realistic fiction. Because your mommy can really read you a bedtime story, can't you? Okay, so we're going to put an RF for that. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to wrap up our lesson. That was kind of like our culminating activity to wrap our lesson up. What we're going to be doing later on in the day is we're going to be doing a journal activity that goes along with our lesson. And what I want you to be thinking about, because we are going to work on that journal activity later, is, do you know, going back to our book, about what mommies do best, what daddies do best, we're going to do a journal activity later where you're going to be able to tell me about, if you know whether or not, how the moose and the mommy and daddy are different. Okay? I want you to think about that. And we're going to write about that later on, where you're going to have to tell me how the mommy and daddy and how the moose are different. Okay? So think about how you want to write. Think about what things are that you want to say. Think about things that you read in that story or you heard in the story when I was reading it today. We're not going to share now, but I want you to kind of keep it all tucked away, and then that's what you're going to be sharing when you write in your journal. And then we'll come back and share those journals later. Okay? Thanks, guys. Now, go ahead and stick your things in your book. You can take your paper that you have and place that in your book. Okay?